Today we are sharing the top secrets that home sellers don't want home buyers to know. So if you are thinking about house hunting anytime in the near future, you are going to want to listen to today's video until the very end. You're not going to want to miss anything today.
And if you're new to this channel, my name's Spencer.
And I'm Mariah.
And we come on here weekly giving you the real estate news. And if you're out there searching this video, odds are you could be a performing buyer wanting to purchase a home in the next year, or even a seller. We are based out of Oregon, and we are here to help you guys with any of your real estate needs. So feel free to reach out to us. Our link is below in the description, so feel free to contact us, and we will reach back out to you that same day.
And if you are thinking about buying or selling real estate anywhere outside of the state of Oregon, feel free to reach out. We would love to set you up with a solid realtor wherever you're at. We have great connections with top agents in so many different markets, and we would love to help you. The first thing that home sellers don't necessarily want buyers to know is you're being recorded.
You're being recorded. What?
I mean, well, not always, but there's a really good chance that you're being recorded.
The more we're going on and ahead in 2024, heading into even, 2030, that sounds ridiculous for me to say. We're getting more digitized. Everything's getting video, and the security systems. If you see a Ring doorbell system or something in the home, you're probably being listened to.
Yeah.
A lot of sellers do that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that, and usually I would like them to disclose for me. And anytime I see a camera, I just say, hey guys, let's do all of our talking outside of the showing. We'll talk afterwards. We're going to go in, view this home, and I just don't want to talk about money. You can point out things you like about the property, yada, 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 but let's take away the negotiation talk while in the home and being present, because it really could do you a misjustice in this sense.
I've heard so many stories too of home sellers getting offended because, and they're reaching out to their, realtor, and they're all upset because of something that was said by the buyers inside the home. Maybe they critique something, but it's
That's the worst.
Really? Like, why do you have to just be listening? I don't know. I don't like that either. It is crazy though how common it is. I feel like back when I got my real estate license in 2015, which it's really not that long ago.
9 years almost.
It was pretty rare back then though that you saw homes having cameras or security, like that type of thing. But now it's like you said, I feel like it's almost more common than not that you're being recorded in some form or fashion in some point during the showing. So whether those, sellers are listening in during the showing, it's always best to, like Spencer said, especially avoid talking about money. Definitely don't go in and talk about how you would just give anything for this house. You'll kill all your negotiations.
Like, how did this all start?
The next thing sellers don't want you to know is their bottom line may not actually be their bottom line. So I have a situation to go with this that happened recently.
Share it. I love these personal testimonies.
I had an offer sent out on a new construction home for a buyer not too long ago, and the buyers needed to sell their home out of state in order to buy this new construction. So our offer was contingent on them selling this home. And the builder was saying, like, if you want to buy this home, you cannot have that contingency. We're not going to work with you. But then after we sent in the offer, after we found out that we couldn't get approved for the home without the contingency, then the seller, the builder, changed their mind. And they were like, actually, we're willing to work with you if you have that contingency. So that's, their bottom line might not always be the bottom line.
I'm a big fan on just submitting something. And I'm big on with my buyers, you never know until that seller really sees it on paper. Because the realities are this home could be sitting for 60, 90 days, even 120 days. I see it often right now in today's market. And if the seller receives something that they think is workable, they're at least going to send a seller's counter. A counter offer to our original terrible offers, what I would state it as. But there's no reason in not doing that right now, especially in a real estate market where everywhere I turn on the news, it says it's crashing, it's tanking. And the reality is there's more home sales happening. Yes, we're down in inventory. Yes, higher days on market are going up. Yes, listing inventories and past sales are a little bit lower than they were last year for this current month. But things are still moving, especially here on the West Coast, in the Oregon area specifically where we live. So these major headlines, maybe we're 2-3 months back from a different area, say New York, but I would say and consider things are still selling. but it's a great time to negotiate, and that's the whole point. Don't just submit an offer full ask if nobody else is submitting an offer.
Right.
To me, that doesn't make any sense. Does that make sense to you, Mariah?
No, I always ask, what the activity's been, if they've received an offer yet. And if they have not received an offer, then I always tell my buyers that's a really good opportunity for us to try to negotiate.
And what's funny is, though, there's so many new agents still. I mean, I don't know what I would be doing if I was a new agent right now and have never done a real estate deal or transaction. It's sometimes very discouraging. But what I notice is when I'm working with a newer agent, meaning, 2-3 years, they could be in the business more than that, but they're more, I wouldn't say like passive, but they're not aggressive in these offers and even presenting offers. Maybe I'm just a one-off, one of a kind, an old school guy that goes to Goodwill and asks for a discount every time, no matter what. And that's just my personality, though. I want to get the best deal. You're born to
negotiate.
And that's just a service that we provide for our clients. And that's maybe a personality trait, but also it's a business trait of what I've been taught through the years.
Well, also, I do think that's part of our job description. If you're doing your job correctly as a real estate agent, like if you're representing a buyer, for example, because I work with a lot of our buyers on our real estate team here. Mm-hmm. If you're representing a buyer, then it is your job to stick up for them and negotiate for them going, with the listing agent and the seller. And obviously there's markets where negotiating kind of goes out the window. Like we saw 2020, 2021, your offer was not looked at and it was definitely just laughed at if you tried to negotiate. But in markets like this, we have the opportunity to really negotiate for our clients. And that is part of our job description.
This is a really good one. Like the sellers always have a new bottom line. And that's so important to understand. Yeah. Because there's no just textbook of this is what has to be done in real estate. I know a lot of creators, developers that are very just ingenuitive, I guess you could say, when writing an offer or creating a deal of any kind. Whether it's the most simple deal, there's always something more they're wanting to get out of sending an offer to a seller. And so with that being said, get creative and let us help you be creative, whether it's your loan program, whether it's the actual offer details we're submitting. Get creative.
To go along with the seller's bottom line, not necessarily being their bottom line, is motivation changes. Things absolutely happen. I know back when I used to prospect to a bunch of for sale by owners when I was a newer agent, and that was a big source of my business. I always remembered them saying like, I'm not very motivated. I don't have to sell. Like I don't have to, I'm not interested in listing my home because I don't actually have to sell it right now. Like things change and motivation changes and prices drop. And that's the same exact thing with home sellers to where their motivation changes. This might be their bottom line right now, but once their home's on the market for a certain amount of time and they're paying taxes on it and, whatever else, like maybe they have 2 mortgages, their motivation could definitely change. The next thing that you want to know as a buyer or that home sellers maybe don't want you to know is they list their property as is. That doesn't necessarily always mean as is. For example, a lot of times you will see a home on the multiple listing service and it will say home being sold as is, meaning seller is putting their foot down. They're letting you know right now before you even look at it, don't ask to do any repairs because we're not going to do them. However, a lot of times in that situation, if the home won't pass an inspection, the seller may end up having to do a few things in order to get it sold. And of course, this heavily has to do with the housing market. Like I said, in 2020, 2021, the seller really was the one in the better position, I guess you could say. The buyer was absolutely in the begging position every single time. And so we didn't really see that a lot. But even right now in this market, as is might not mean 100% as is.
I wrote as is on one of my listing agreements today.
You did?
Yeah.
You wrote as is on that?
Because the seller told me to.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Does that just mean as is I'm not doing any repairs, or as is submit an offer if it's lower than ask price, I might accept it because it's as is?
That's something to think about. That's something to think about. I mean, a lot of times, like, I really think this has to do with the market. I wouldn't consider if my buyer was looking at a property and it said as is, and it was a market where I knew the seller's not going to budge or do anything, then I would say it's not wise to look at it. But in a market like this, especially where we're low on inventory, I would say it doesn't hurt for us to look at it and inquire about it. All right. So the next thing that buyers should know about is Seller's property disclosures. So on seller's property disclosures, this is basically a form that when somebody is going to list their house for sale with a real estate professional, they have to fill out this entire form. It's like a big long questionnaire asking them all the questions about like, was there ever a leak in the roof? And if so, what'd you do to fix it? All the things. And the sellers might not want you to know this, or they might, that a lot of the things on that those property disclosures, they're going to be checked unknown, because a lot of times the sellers just don't know, or they don't want the liability. But a lot of times, you know, it's the seller's responsibility to answer it as honestly as possible to the best of their knowledge. But a lot of times they just actually don't know the certain things, like when the roof was last replaced. In certain situations, they might not know that information.
Yeah, especially if they're like a second or third owner of this home. They didn't actually put the roof on, but it looks new from 8 years ago. They don't know the actual date, so they're not going to put an actual date. They're going to most likely check unknown. Now, I take this seller's property disclosure pamphlet, I guess you could say, as a grain of salt. And that's why with all my buyers, I encourage you guys strongly, go get your inspection done. Go perform and do your own due diligence during that due diligence period, your inspection period. Usually I write in 12 business days. That gives us just over 2 weeks to get an inspection performed, negotiate repairs if needed, and then move on to that appraisal period. And that's really your time. I would never rely on a seller's property disclosure to make the deal or not. Anytime, I mean, even buying from my grandma or selling from my grandma, she wrote a seller's property disclosure. I did not care what it said. I put my name on it, and I knew I'd do my own due diligence through that sale process. So just keep that in mind. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't get offended if you find out something, you know, a year and a half later after purchase. Just because, I mean, you got to feel for the seller. Sometimes they're not the original owner in this 1968 built house.
Yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. We come on here every single week and talk all about real estate. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell, and we'll see you next week.